Springster is fun for a girl and a boy. It's the CoCo Show, episode 20. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the CoCo Show. I'm John.
And I'm Aaron.
And today, Aaron, we're going to be talking about Springster. Tell me about your experience with Slinkies.
You know, I know Slinkies were always a big deal, right? And of course, I'm an older guy, and as you remind everyone, and so those sorts of toys were a lot more popular back when I was younger. And I did have Slinkies. I had knockoff Slinkies, you know. And ultimately, what happened to me with the Slinkies is they would always get screwed up. You know what I'm saying? They wouldn't coil back right, or they'd get wound into itself. You know, and so those things, when you bought them, it's a lot like silly putty or something. When you got that stuff, it's got a shelf life that it runs out pretty quick because the kid's got to screw those suckers up.
Yeah.
Now, if you watch the kids on TV with the Slinkies, they'd have the Slinkies going down ramps and stairs and all this crazy crap. You're like, holy smokes. In real life, man, you spent most of your time like begging the Slinky to do 1/8 of the cool stuff it could do, and I never had much luck with the Slinky.
If you were going to rank, you know, your classic children's toys from your era, of course, you have the hoop and the stick.
Yeah.
You've got the
hoop and the
silly
stick.
putty. Yeah.
We didn't have that.
What?
My God, that's real old. The hoop and the stick.
Well, you
I didn't
are
grow up
real
in
old.
the 50s.
Okay, you got your silly putty, you got your Stretch Armstrong, and you got your Slinky.
Yeah, yeah.
Where are you going to rank? Where are you going to rank those?
You know, I would love to say that I didn't have any of those, but I had them all. I mean, or knew someone like the Stretch Armstrong. That's another thing, and it was very, you know, kids. All we did was just destroy crap. That's what. So old Stretch Armstrong, we'll stretch that sucker, and by God, we stretched him until he broke, or we'd wrap him around himself, you know, and screw him up. Someone in the chat mentioned Light Bright. I had one of those. I had Spirographs. Very similar.
I love Spirograph.
The one thing about Light Brights is that you would be playing with a Light Bright, right? You're making that picture, and and also you'd run out all these pictures. But the problem is they were those little pointy gimmicks. You get those suckers in that shag carpeting. That lights you up.
You're not going to find them.
Also, once you took all the time to put those Light Brights together, you didn't want to take them apart. So ultimately, it would get kicked over, and they'd all come out, and they'd sit there in your room for a month or 2 months. So, and in Spirograph, I mean, it's basically, that's almost like geometry. So you're really hitting your borderline, and now it's like, well, it's
you're borderline in the edutainment category.
You got that right, buddy. It's exactly right.
So, with a Light Bright, I'm there with you. They never show in the commercial the kids painstakingly taking out each one of those tiny lights, you know, to make the next picture. That's true.
Those things are still around. Like even my kid had a Light
All
Bright.
of that stuff is still around. I mean, because parents buy what they had, what they were, you know, when they were kids. One thing that I think that was unique to my generation that I think didn't come, like you probably didn't have this, was Magna Doodle.
Is that where you put the little metal filaments to make the guy hair and stuff?
No. Magna Doodle is like a pad, sort of like an Etch-a-Sketch pad that you draw on it, but at the end of the pen is a magnet, and it's picking up magnets from below the surface, so you can draw pictures with the magnet.
I think the boy had one of those, you know, back.
And then you wipe it, to wipe it clean.
Yeah,
but you did have an Etch-a-Sketch, right?
Yeah, we had those.
Listen, I've seen people draw stuff with Etch-a-Sketches that you wouldn't believe.
Yeah, you know, I could make a box, or maybe the back of a truck that was a longer box, like a rectangle. But the Etch-a-Sketch, you wanted to see what was in that. That's another problem that toys had. Like, what's in a Stretch Armstrong? There's got to be some gel or something in there. So you get in there, you rip those suckers open, you know, and then that's it, the Stretch Armstrong or the Etch-a-Sketch. You know, it's funny, my kid now, and I don't know how all kids are, because I still see toy commercials. He gives no craps about toys. None. He wants his phone. He wants his Switch. He wants his Nintendo 3DS. That's pretty much all he wants, his computer. So, I mean, toy manufacturers, I can see why Toys R Us went out, because those days are over, man. The Slinky, and I don't think Slinky's coming back. He'll be around for nostalgic purposes, but there's not going to be a big Slinky comeback anytime soon.
Maybe they'll get into NFTs.
Yeah.
That's next time.
Oh, geez. Don't even go there.
All right, Aaron. Enough of this banter. Let's talk about Springster for the Tandy Color Computer.
You know, it's funny, Boat. I would always heard of this game on the periphery of, like, I barely knew about it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I looked into it this week, everyone else on Earth was exactly like me. Like, this game did exist. But that's pretty much where the knowledge ends on the old Springster. But let's get into it as best we can. This was a Tandy Color Computer 3 exclusive, Boat,
right,
in every sense of the word. You couldn't get it on any other Tandy, and you couldn't get it on any other machine. This was a Tandy Color Computer 3 exclusive, put out by the awesomely named Spectral Associates, Boat.
Yeah,
is
big,
there a better name?
high profile publisher for the CoCo.
Yeah, they did a lot of stuff, and then then ultimately I looked into them. I believe they were out of Texas. Ultimately, they just went away. But they were one of those companies. They just went away.
Yeah.
And of course, Radio Shack published this. This came out in '87, Boat. So this is a real early CoCo 3 title. In fact, before we get too deep into it, I actually, when I got my last big load of stuff, I own this game. There it is. If you're wondering what the Springster looks like, and it actually has, what I like about it is if you look, you can actually see the instructions are painted on the cartridge. Look at that.
What a strange way to paste that on there, where the artwork overlaps over the label part, you know, over the spine of the.
Yeah. I get the feeling that they just didn't give a crap about it.
You get that feeling with a lot of CoCo stuff.
Well, how many cartridges have you ever bought in your whole life that had the instructions it's got the pitch written on it right on the front? So, you know, what it probably was, you know, the CoCo boxes, maybe they just, of course, it did have an instruction book that sat in front of it. So I don't know why they did that. It's very odd. So, this, of course, required the 128K. This supports 1 or 2 players in hot seat, which is kind of neat. So when you load this game up, it asks you if it supports the composite or RGB setup, which is nice. It also asks how many players, and you have a skill level between 1 and 3, which is nice. And so then it draws the board. Now, the board on this, it's very, if the Spectrum had a few more colors, this was the kind of board you might get, isn't it, Bo? It's kind of that because isometric almost.
It's isometric. And the board is, you know, mostly blue and white. You know, the walls of the structure are blue, and then the squares are white. And then, of course, you've got the colored squares.
Yeah. This game, when you boot it up, a lot of people mistakenly think to themselves, hey, this looks like a Q-Bert. I mean, first of all, the CoCo facilitates clones. So when you see something, the first thing you do is try to figure out what they're ripping off. Almost every time, right? And so you're like, well, what is this? It looks sort of like a Marble Madness or a Crystal Castles, but I don't think I've ever played a game like this.
This is unique. This is a unique game. And there's not a lot of games for the CoCo that you can really say it's a completely unique idea. This is one of them.
That's true. So you play the Springster, and the Springster is a slinky. Let's call it what it is, there's a generic term for what that toy is. A
spring-based device.
Spring-based toy. And the Springster roams around this isometric maze, and you have to obey the laws of the Springster, which are you can go down 1 level or up 1 level, but you can't go up more than that. So there are plenty of times where you'll come across a ledge that's like 2 or more levels. You've got to go around and find a way up or down. All right, that's the way it is. Just like a real slinky. The slinky can down 1 stair, but if you try to put the slinky down 2 or 3 stairs, it just falls to its death. That's in this game.
Unlike slinkies, this slinky can actually travel upstairs as well.
Yeah. So the play field, Boat, and this is according to the documents, is composed of 256 squares. Okay, a lot of squares, Boat. Yeah. And on top of these squares, you're going to get several different things. They're either going to be a blank white square, or there'll be an item. Now, there are 8 items that could be in this thing. You've got a flask, a ring, a candle, pot of gold, crown, diamond, scepter, and then if you get to certain levels, you can get a melon, okay, which we'll get to that. You've also got bad guys that are going around. These guys aren't on every level, I don't think. You've got Blork, Stomper, Hoodmaster, Spudman, and Assassin. And these guys roam around. Okay, so now, this game gets complicated in terms of what's going on. So I'm going to try to, I've got the rule book here because I had to have the rule book open when I played this because I've tried to play this without the rule book. It's way too complex. I'm assuming you did the same thing. So,
well, I always go to the rule book with these CoCo games because you never know what's lurking.
Right. So I mentioned that you've got all these squares. Most of them are white, but occasionally you'll see a colored square. And different colored squares do different stuff, okay? If you land on purple squares, those only come out when you're finishing the level, okay? So to get a purple square, you have to activate it, okay? Red squares will activate the purple squares to open, but you've got to have the pot of gold in your possession when you touch the red square to open the doorway. The gimmick in this game is that the purple squares lead to interdimensional doorways. All right.
Yeah, basically that's how you get to the next level in common parlance.
Right. If you've got a zap, there's a little the word zap's written on the screen. If you walk onto a red square and you hold your button, it will zap anything else in the game that's on that square, on a red square. So that's a way to kill some of the enemies. And then the zap has I think it's like a 30-second reset timer. All right. So, and it's funny because if you think about it, that isn't a huge help.
No, because you are constantly pursued by your foes in this game.
Right.
And if you're just hanging out on a red square waiting for other things to be on a red square, that's not the most efficient use of your time.
Then you've got green squares. All the bad guys on green squares are killed when you land on a green square.
Yeah, the green square is where you want to be hanging out more often. And the green squares are also, I believe, more plentiful. Or maybe there's an equal number of squares.
Well,
I don't know. But
if you land on eventually the green squares will turn black.
They'll run out of juice.
If you land on a permanently black square, you die. So they sort of turn the tables.
Right.
All right. Now, then you've got the dark blue squares. Those can have hidden prizes in them. If when you go on those, and they can have a hidden prize. If you're holding the emerald ring and you move on one and hit the button, you can make it throw the enemy that's chasing you off your trail. Does this sound complex? It is.
It's incredibly complex.
Then you've got the light blue squares, though, and on those, that's basically like where the bad guys come out from another plane on the earth. So they're basically like bad guy generators. If you hit the fire button when you're holding the candle and move on to a light blue square, it'll make you invisible to all the bad guys except the Hoodmaster. Okay? Now, can you tell the difference between the Hoodmaster and all these other guys? Probably not, because these guys are pretty small. So I'll try desperately to figure out who was who, and who knows? I don't know who it is. Now, each treasure has a different point value, and if after you go through the maze on I think it's level 8 and on 16 and 24, but on certain mazes you can get the melon, which is ultimately what you're going after.
Which is stupid. Well, I mean, who decides to make the melon the ultimate prize when there's a pot of gold, a magic scepter, an enchanted ring?
If you think about it, Boat, and in the land where there are 100,000 crowns and pots of gold, that melon's worth a lot because you ain't going to be eating a pot of gold.
You got a good point.
It's not like there's a McDonald's right here that says now accepting gold. So melons, turns out, are pretty valuable. So ultimately, the goal of this game is to get off the maze and get to the maze, like the 6th maze in, I think it is, where you can get the melon, and then you sort of go in reverse through the mazes to get the melon out of there, okay? This game also has a timer, and I should mention on the side a big hourglass, and so you've also got to contend with that, and you also have to get treasure at a certain amount of time, too. This game has too many rules, I guess is where I'm going here, Boat. Give me your thoughts on I mean, I know you read this book.
Here's the thing. There's a lot to remember, but you don't have to remember everything all the time.
You can't. That's impossible.
Yeah. What you need to remember is that you need to get the pot of gold, you need to land on a red square, and then you need to go to the purple square to get to the next level. Okay, that's really all you need to know. Now, you're not going to be able to get out of the level until you collect all the items. So you've got to collect all the other items as you go.
Yeah.
But all the rest of that stuff, like the zap stuff and knowing what squares like the other hidden treasures are on and stuff like that, the whole thing about throwing the guys off your path with whatever square that was, I never paid attention to any of that stuff. You can still have fun with this game without knowing all the rules. And there's something to be said for having a complicated rule set that isn't absolutely necessary that you need to be familiar with in order to enjoy the game. That said, it was like this guy knew he was only going to be making one game in his life. And by God, he was going to throw every single idea he had in there.
It reminds me of those board game competitions when you go to CharCon. It's like some guy, this is his first game, so it's going to have cards, dice, a spinner. It's going to have everything.
That's right. That's right. It's a worker placement, resource management, trading simulator, space trucker game.
So here's the hidden hilarity to this game, and you sort of touched on it. You've got blue squares. You got light blue and dark blue squares. Green. You got orange. You've got different treasures that activate the squares in different ways. You got 5 or 6 different bad guys. Right. You've got levels that we have to get a melon. All right. You've got a zapper, a timer. Okay. You've got all this stuff, this big complicated mess, and yet this game somehow finds a way to actually be kind of good. Because I actually enjoyed the game. After saying all that stuff, I did enjoy the game. And I'm much like yourself, Boat, with the because again, I owned it, but I never really played it. With a layman's knowledge of the rules. And the rule book literally opened beside me. I'm not lying about that. I turned the screen on so I could see what the stuff did. I enjoyed playing the game. Now, why? Well, it's actually challenging. It looks nice. You know.
Okay. Let's reverse a little bit.
Okay, please.
I don't think this game looks nice.
Really?
I think this game looks too detailed to be abstract. The enemies in this game, you've got what look like little pygmy voodoo dolls.
Yeah.
And then you've got what looks like a red sock. The red sock is sort of your nemesis. I don't believe I'm surely the instructions name these creatures.
It did. I read the names, but you got your the Blork. The Blork is like a guy with his little hand sticking out like this, and then you got the Stomper, which is the shoe. That's the sock you were talking about. Then
now what's the owl looking thing?
Well, that's the Spud Man.
Oh, of
listen,
course.
What a name. Then you've got the Hood Master. These are all this is like someone started their own minor league wrestling promotion. I think tonight the Stomper's taking on the Hoodmaster with the Spud Man cornering him. And then you've got the Assassin, like I said, in Blork. It's just it's like a small time promotion run out of cross lanes.
Yeah. The problem is that the graphics are just too low fidelity to really get a sense of what these guys are. And as a result, it just makes it look very sort of childish and simplistic. I'm not a fan of the way the enemies are rendered in this game. I think the spring looks cool.
Yeah.
I've got no problems with the way that the levels are laid out, but you either got to make the enemies look a little bit more simplistic or maybe somehow up-res everything, which I guess maybe you'd have to make the board smaller to make and so I don't know. That to me kind of cheapens the game. The enemies are not animated. They sort of just kind of blunder around. They disappear and reappear. It's totally different than Q-Bert, which there are natural comparisons to be made where you see the enemies bouncing around in Q-Bert. Like when you see the little spring thing in Q-Bert and it's bouncing around, it looks like a cartoon. But this is very primitive. Primitive.
I think listen, there's a lot moving around.
Yeah,
there's a lot. I think it's okay, but
I think there were sacrifices made.
Well, though. These bad guys aren't just running. Listen to this, okay? And you may not have read this. These different bad guys are completely different. Like, for example, the Hoodmaster, he only comes directly at you when you're invisible. Otherwise, he just wanders around. The Spud Man creates new bad guys, right? The Assassin causes up-down doorways to close. Yeah. The Spring Stomper, he just stomps you. That's cool. They made all the bad guys totally different.
I think my only complaints are with the looks. The enemy personality types, that's insane. That's awesome. That's super cool.
I think listen, it's a lot. It reminds me sort of like Sensible Soccer. You've got these tiny little guys that are so small. It's not like there's a boatload of detail.
Right. Imagine if you're listening to this and you can't see what we're looking at. Yeah. Imagine the Sensible Soccer guys moving, sort of just kind of floating around this grid. That's what you've got.
This is almost like this reminds me of the plains of hell, right? That's what these guys.
No,
they
tell
look
me more
like
about the planes
they
of
look
hell.
like little devils or something coming at you.
Yeah.
And then you can't possibly win. So it just reminds me of what you would do, like instead of pushing the boulder.
Because, unlike most games, being touched by the majority of the enemies in this game doesn't kill you. The little dolls just get in your way. They impede your progress. The Spudmaster, you can kill the Spudmaster just right off by just like running into him. The demonic sock was always the thing that I was
It's
the
the
most terror
Spud Man and the Stomper. It's a demonic shoe, Boat. Get it right, not a demonic sock. But yeah, it's wacky. Let's just say this is a one wacky game.
It's a wacky game. Yeah.
Believe it or not, Boat, this is impressive. According to the docs, there are 32 different levels that are laid out in this. That's a lot. And like I said, the level layouts are pretty neat, and it also draws them surprisingly quickly. If you ever played Crystal Castles, this is way faster as it lays them out than, in terms of, like, you don't have to sit around waiting in between levels.
Right. That part of the game, I definitely appreciate the speed because, again, like you say, for a game like this, you would expect these levels to just be drawn really, really slow, like golf course style.
Right. So, I mean, do you like this? Is that what you're saying, or do you not know?
I had a lot of fun with this game. It's incredibly unique, and for me, that is like one of the best things that I can say about a game is like, this is a game that is unlike any other game that I've played to a large extent. So hats off to Spectral Associates for bringing this out.
I've got to say, it is one oddball game, but, I think if someone could master the documentation on it, you know what I mean? You might have something here that might be sort of fun. I'm not 100% sure if anyone would have that kind of attention span, to be honest with you, because it would be difficult to pull out. But I'm going to give this in a weird way. I mean, it seems like we just sat here and killed it for 10 minutes. But in a weird way, I think it's kind of fun, and I really enjoyed it. I did not see... Again, this game barely exists. I mean, no one talks about it. There's very little on the internet. Most of the information I got came from Moby Games and from Elker's Boyle's site.
Right.
So really, the most information you're going to get about this game is to just get the docs, which they're out there. But otherwise, you're boned there. I looked on eBay. There are cartridges available. I mean, clearly, I got mine as part of a deal, so they're out there. And they're selling between $12 and $30. I actually saw one go for $4. So if you're willing to go in this cheap, I believe this came, despite the fact that I've got the graphic up there with the official Radio Shack case, I believe this came in one of the clear plastic cases that just hang on a hook,
like a hang tab case,
you know,
acrylic.
And so I don't think they actually had a paper case, but it does have docs, you know, like a square documentation book. So you can, that is something. I mean, one thing, you know, if Odyssey 2 cartridges are ultra collectible because they look so cool, TRS-80 Color Computer cartridges are the exact opposite. The boxes are all the same and they're crap. And so it's, you know, I mean, with a few exceptions.
Although I do enjoy the Spudmaster's look there on the label.
I enjoy the fact that that you actually identified the Spudmaster. So good for you, Boat. But I think that's a long and short of it. But did we get any Discord action on this?
We did. L. Curtis Boyle, all hail. He writes, a game that I had to play again as it has been a while. I do remember when I first got it, trying to remember all the colored squares and treasures and how they interacted threw me off wanting to play the game. The game itself being a kind of treasure hunting cross between Q-Bert and Crystal Castles with a bunch of special power color squares added is actually quite good and original once you do memorize the various colored squares and how to use them. You can get away with a few basic rules, collecting all the treasures, including the ones you have to unhide by doing various things, blah, 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 blah. Quite enjoyable once one gets the hang of it. I give it a 7.5 out of 10, mostly for originality. The sound is minimal but functional. The graphics were a good early attempt at using the CoCo 3's new 16 color mode at the time. It's a very colorful game.
Yeah, it is. It looks. I think it looks great. I disagree with you on that.
Graham, WWebQ writes, who doesn't like controlling a slinky? As Curtis has said, this was tough to figure out without a manual, and at first I just moved around the screen and touched the colored squares to see what they did. I figured some of them out, but it took longer to realize the correct way to use them. I eventually cheated and watched a long play video, which still didn't help a lot, but I did learn a few other things and that were not so obvious. It does indeed remind me of Crystal Castles in the way it draws on screen, and that adds to its charm. The different heights on the squares add to the challenge of forcing you to go certain ways with timing. I do wish there were more sounds, and if the playfield was maybe 12 by 12 instead of 16 by 16, things would have been a little easier to see. Overall, I had a good time with this and jumped for joy when I reached Plane 2, 7 out of 10. And Frodo NL himself, he writes, one starts by reading the manual and being confused. Then one decides to just try the game and hope one remembers what some colored squares do. The game starts and one cannot help but wonder if the makers considered just calling the game Slinky. After a few minutes of play, one somehow gets through level after level, and it turns out the game, while not the simplest to explain, is actually not nearly as hard to play as it seemed at first. The game actually turns out to be quite fun, with reasonable graphics. A bit more sound wouldn't have hurt, but even without it, the game is engaging. 8 out of 10. So I think the Discord folks agree with us on this one, Aaron.
You know, if you think about it, Bud, I was just pondering this as you were reading those. You've got all these different colored squares, and they do different things depending on certain items you have, right? It's almost like a dungeon crawler or something. You know what I'm saying? It's what it reminds me of, where you would go into certain areas. If you had the right object, you could make certain things happen. I mean, it's real unusual. It's very, very, very tricky for a twitchier game. I mean, it's of all the games we played, this one stands on its own as one of the most complicated, easy games I think I've ever played.
Yeah. That's a great summation. All right, Aaron. Well, as we come to the end of the show, I do want to remind everybody that if you enjoy the CoCo Show, you can head on over to patreon.com/the CoCo Show and throw us a couple bucks a month. And like I said, we are trying to reach our goal of making the CoCo Show a weekly affair, a weekly CoCo Show. Wouldn't it be lovely? And we are well on our way, including our newest patron that just came over the air as we were recording. We'd like to welcome Edvin Helland to the fold. Welcome, Edvin. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I hope that you are drinking a cold one in the man cave as we speak, ready to fall asleep on the stream later tonight. We also want to thank Robert Murphy. Thank you so much. He is our CoCo Show VIP. He is the man. Steve Rasmussen, Buttons, and William Becker. We thank you all for helping us reach our goal of $200 per month, which will turn the CoCo Show into a weekly show. Now, Aaron, I believe I chose Springster as the last game. That makes your pick the next one. What would you like to play on the next CoCo Show?
I got one here. Let's try Polaris. I don't think we've touched Polaris, have we, both?
I like it. I like that band.
Okay, well, there you go. I don't know who they are, so
yeah,
probably College Rock.
College Rock. That we do record the show live every time that we record, and you can join us at twitch.tv/Amigos Retro Gaming. We've got quite the crowd with us today, and I'd like to give them a shout out for being here with us. We got Duncan Styles doing the moderating like he always does. He's the man. Amiga Live's with us. Atten, Beach Bum, Bike Me, Bitstorm, Canadian Retro Things, a big CoCo guy himself, Carbon 14 XYZ, Christian Russell is with us, Cobrian, Commander Root, Christian Orngy, Dave Velociraptor from Scotland, he's with us, Delamort 78, Edvin Helland broadcasting from the Man Cave, Exile in Paradise is with us, Feet, of course, Frodo and L, Hamo 1, Boss Man, I am Paul H, Level Lord, Jason Warrens, Cool, 1978, L, Curtis B, Mitsuyama, Mr. Cola, Oram, Picard 2010, RetroRewind.ca, Rob O'Hara, Super Tech Boy, Tom Toms, VNK, Vigoro Pros, Wide World of Retro, Wing Chun Wolf, and Z9K9. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us this afternoon. All right, Aaron. That's going to do it for this episode of the CoCo Show. We will see you guys next time. Until then, all hail
L. Curtis Boyle.